Page 64. Let's wrap this up. The 10 Commandments, the 10 cosmic commandments, and we're right on schedule as to what we wanted to do. And let's look at Exodus chapter 20 on page 64 and go to verse 16, and it says, "Thou shalt not bear false witness against your neighbor." The key here, and the key question is, who is your neighbor? All right? Who is your neighbor? I mean, if you're like me, it's very hard for you to bear false witness against your neighbor because you don't even know who they are. As a car goes in, people get out, they go, who are they? I don't have any idea who they are, but I don't know. You say a neighbor is a neighbor, one who lives next door. So you don't bear false witness about your neighbor. You don't lie about your neighbor. I want you to understand something. We're not doing a social commentary on the 10 Commandments. We're doing a cosmic commentary. It doesn't make any difference. All of these things, Emily Post or whoever she is, Ann Landers, whatever, these are types of things that fit into a social category. You should be nice to people. That's not what this is about. This is cosmic. The implications of this thing are far-reaching in a universal proportion. In order to link you to the stars, in order to link you to the energy of God, if you would, and talking about the person who lives next door or down the street is not relevant when you get into cosmic things. How many of you have had or do have a mother? The rest of you, tell me how this happened, you know. Most of you had a mother. How many of you have had a brother? How many of you have had a sister? Okay, so you know what a brother is. You know what a sister is. You understand. So you got a mother, you know what a mother is. You've got a brother. You know what that is. You got a sister. You know what a sister is. So let me take you, however, and switch this around from this being a family type of relationship in this town or whatever town you live in good old America and so forth and so on. And let's take it to a cosmic. Let's take a cosmic look at it. Go to page 788. On page 788, you get to Matthew chapter 12. Matthew chapter 12. And in Matthew chapter 12, on page 788, you come to verse 47. And somebody comes up to Jesus and said, "Hey, behold, your mother and your brothers stand without desiring to speak to you." Say, your mother and brother are outside. They want to talk to you. And look at the answer. Who is my mother? Who are my brothers? Say, and what he's telling them, my mother and my brother are not people standing outside this building. And he stretched forth his hand toward his disciples. He says, "There's my mother. There's my brother. Whoever shall do the will of my Father which is in heaven, that's my brother. That's my sister. That's my mother." So there's a whole definition all of a sudden comes to you about a mother, a brother, and a sister that have nothing to do with your interpretation of a mother and a brother and a sister. That's not what you think of as a mother and a brother or a sister. You say, here's a picture of my mom. Oh, this is my sister. She lives in Newark. This is my brother. He comes. But in the book here, Jesus says, look, these people you're talking about, they have nothing. That's irrelevant. I'm not concerned about that. The brother and the mother and the sister are something that is cosmic. Now, what about, for instance, father? Why does father speak into this? Remember we had a couple of weeks ago, honor your father and your mother? But we said it has nothing to do with a father. Has nothing to do with the father that you've known all of your life. And how do we prove that? Go to page 800. You're on 788. Go to page 800 and look at Matthew chapter 23. And on page 800 in Matthew chapter 23 and verse 9, here's Jesus says, "And call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father, which is in heaven." And so then we understood that this is not talking about a father that you have. This is talking about something that is in heaven. Something that you have to honor in heaven. So, honor your father. And what did we find out? Because Jesus says, call one you only have one who is a father, that's in heaven. And we found out in Luke 17:21 that God's kingdom is heaven, and the kingdom of God is within you. It's the Father within you. It's the mind within you. The Father is the mind. The Mother is the Spirit. And so that we honor our Father when we raise our mind. We honor our Mother when we raise our spirit. It has nothing to do. As I said, if you're going to honor your father and your mother, and your father and your mother are Bonnie and Clyde, you got a problem. I had a problem in my house. I had I'm not going to go into it, but I had a very violent experience as a little child. For years, it was violence and blood and cops and knives flying all over the place. I have a difficult time if I think of this person, even though he had a sickness, yes, but still to honor and say, boy, I hope you have one like I had. No, I can't say that. And that's what Jesus says. There's no man on this earth that you can call Father. You have to understand that Father is in heaven. Father is in the kingdom of heaven is in you. Father is mind. Mother is spirit. You honor them by raising them. So here we find out that Jesus' mother, brother, and sister do not mean mother, brother, and sister. They mean those that do the will, that are disciples of His. And His will is to energize that which is within you. His will is to energize the mind. See? And so then we get to this point. It says, do not bear false witness against your neighbor. Well, if mother isn't mother, brother isn't brother, sister isn't sister, mother and father are not mother and father, who's neighbor? Who's neighbor? And that's what we have to, and we should look at. Who is neighbor? The dictionary defines neighbor as one who lives near. But I'm saying to you, your neighbor is your inner person. That one who is close to you. That one is nearer to you than the person who lives next door. Inside of you, there is somebody inside of you that lives closer than somebody who lives over here or somebody who lives over here. There's a song that we sing. It's done by Vangelis and John Anderson, and it says, your friend is close by your side. It speaks in far ancient tongue. Say, that's your neighbor. And so you must not bear false witness against this neighbor. You must not lie about this neighbor. In other words, you must not tell an untruth about your inner person. Have you ever had anybody tell you an untruth about your neighbor? Have you ever had anybody tell you an untruth about your inner person? Yes, you have, because they've told you, don't go near that person, you'll open your mind to devils. You'll open your mind to demons. There's bad things in there. See? That's bearing false witness about your neighbor. If somebody tells you not to meditate because you'll touch something evil in there, that's bearing false witness about your neighbor. You have two neighbors. You have a neighbor who lives on the left, you have a neighbor who lives on the right. To place your trust on the neighbor on the left is to bear false witness about your neighbor, because you're saying, oh, this is wonderful. No, this isn't wonderful. This is a problem. This is the source of the problems of the whole world. This is the carnal mind. And you're placing your trust in this neighbor. You're bearing a false witness. You're telling everybody, this is where all the wonderful things happen. No, they don't. And then you're saying to people, stay away from this. This is a cult. This is evil. No, it's not. See? You're bearing false witness against your neighbor you don't understand. And you sit and you read a Bible and you haven't the slightest idea what words you're looking at, because the words you're looking at don't mean what they say. See? So then you have to turn around and you have to realize, okay, have I got two neighbors, and this is the carnal neighbor, this is the occult, the divine neighbor, this is the neighbor of the right side, this is the neighbor of the left side, and I'm telling everybody, I'm telling all of my emotions. It's like I was telling you on television about this healings and all of these things that are done by the neighbor on the left side, and we're saying these wonderful. No, it's not wonderful. And yet this here, how many people have been killed? How many people have been ostracized? How many of the great teachers? Who are the great teachers who understand of this? Of a Joel Goldsmith? Of a Hilton Otima? Of an Edmund Fox? And all of these different people? Who knows of them? Nobody knows of them. But they know the ones on television who idolize the neighbor over here. They don't know these people who told you about the neighbor here. They don't know who they are. You go up and down the street. You go into every church on this side and say, do you know Joel Goldsmith? Who? Do you know of Emmett Fox? Who? Do you know of Joffrey Hudson? Who? Do you know of Hilton Home Team? Who? I don't know these people. Who are these people? I never heard of these people. Oh, they talk about the neighbor on the right. But I know of Jimmy Swaggart, and I know of all of these other people who talk about the neighbor and who idolize the neighbor on the left. I know of all of these people. And so they say the neighbor on the left is good when the neighbor on the left is bad. They say the neighbor on the right is bad when the neighbor on the left is good. They call good evil and evil good. To place your trust in the neighbor on the left. Watch. Page 924. The neighbor on the left is the carnal mind. And we have, don't think I'm limiting this or I'm saying anything about Christian fundamentalists. Believe me, there's many in the New Age. I would say the predominant, the overwhelming number of people in the New Age place their whole emphasis on the neighbor on the left. It's all emotions. It is all emotions. They want to see things. They want to go up to Arizona and spin around in some kind of a thing on top of a Grand Canyon or something. It's all emotions. It's all emotions. I have people come in here. We have just as much trouble with people who are in the New Age as people who are in the Old Age. You know, they got feathers and smoke and glass and all this stuff they put on their heads and spin around and everything. And if you don't do that, well, I'm getting out of here. That's the neighbor on the left. Talking about this. Talking about that. So who's the neighbor on the left? The carnal mind. It's the left hemisphere of the brain. What's it say? Romans chapter 8, verse 7. Because the carnal mind is enmity against God. It is not subject to the law of God, neither can it be. Neither can it be. That's the neighbor on the left. It's not possible for you to act out the things of God from this side. Oh, this is wonderful. Don't say it's not wonderful. Joan and I went down to Atlantic City on Thanksgiving. And we ate in a Fortune's restaurant. It was good, great. Great. I loved the enjoyment. The people, everybody was nice. It was exciting. It was exhilarating. The food was great. It was great. I love it. But this isn't where God is. This is where we are. This is where God is. That's the neighbor on the right. And you got to bear a true witness about the neighbor on the right. You can't bear a false. You can't say this is evil. Because when you say this is evil, you're blaspheming God. And you're bearing false witness. And when you say this is good, you're bearing false witness. To cause suspicions of fear about your neighbor on the right is to bear false witness. How do I know? I'll show you. Page 886. Page 886. John chapter 14. Page 886. Who's the neighbor on the right? The one in you. The one that can't be seen. The one that can't be touched. The one that can't be felt. The one that can't be religionized. John chapter 14, verse 20. I say unto you. Excuse me. John chapter 14, verse 20. At that day you shall know I am in my Father, you in me, and I in you. That's your neighbor who lives on the right. I in you. Who is he defined as here? Jesus Christ, the neighbor on the right. And what are we told? Don't go in there. How could there be demons? How could there be devils here if that book says that Jesus Christ said he's in there? How could there be devils? Why don't people listen? They all got Bibles. They strut around with their Bibles. Oh, God bless you, brother. I got the Word of God. What? Why don't they read it? Why don't they read it? And if they read it, they say, wow, it's the Christ who said he dwells inside of me. Then how could there be evil? How could there be demons? Well, how do we do this? How do we make the neighbor on the right? What do we do? Go to page 800 and whatever it is. What did I tell you? 886. Well, that's the book of John chapter 14. Go to John chapter 21. John chapter 21. All right, you can figure out what that is. And look at verse 6. In John chapter 21, verse 6, and he said to them, cast your net to the right side, and you shall find. Cast your net to the right side. Cast your energy to the right side. Cast yourself to the right side. Cast yourself to the neighbor who lives on the right side. And don't bear false witness saying it's a cult, or it's evil, or it's dangerous, or it's devils or demons. That's false witness. Cast your net to the right side. And don't cast your net to the left side and say this is God, and this is all wonderful, and we're going to sing songs. You can do the same. You can get the same emotionalism at a Rolling Stones concert. I see the kids. You see at the Rolling Stones concerts all the time. You see them at the Michael Jackson concerts. You see them at all the rock concerts. And what you see, they light their cigarette lighters, and they all go like this, so they got their hands in the air, and they're having a wonderful time, and there's nothing wrong with it. But it's not God. God's over here on the right side. And that's why Jesus says, cast your net to the right side, and you shall find. Know your neighbor. Know your neighbor on the right side, and speak truth about your neighbor. And don't be afraid to stand up for your neighbor who lives on the right side. Because there are people who are going to tell you false things about your neighbor. And I can say just about everybody who has sat here, somebody has told you a lie about your neighbor who lives on the right side. The neighbor on the left is religion. Systems of rules and regulations and fear and guilt. Tell the truth. The neighbor on the right is meditation. It is separation from thought. It is nirvana. It is Om. It is individual freedom. It is harmony with nature. Tell the truth about your neighbor. The neighbor on the right is perfection. And as the Apostle Paul says, let us leave the doctrines and move on to perfection. Thou shalt not bear false witness against your neighbor. And do you see how cosmic that is? I gotta say, the guy across the street wears army boots. Who cares? When I start talking about the neighbor who dwells in me on the right side, and I start to tell the truth about that neighbor, I am bearing true witness about God. I am bearing true witness about Christ. I am bearing true witness about Buddha and Krishna. I am bearing true witness about the universe. I am bearing true witness to this magnificence in Pegasus. You know what's an interesting thing? I don't know if you want to do something. Tell me what page the book of Job is on, real quick. Guys, I didn't. Just tell me. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Job chapter 38. Tell me what page? 458. I want to show you something. Johnny Schultz, I want you to look at this. Job chapter 38, page 458. Josie, I want you to see this. People are especially interested in this. I'm going to show you something. It's very important. Do you know that Job is the oldest book known to man? Do you know that? Do you know it's an old Oriental drama that is thousands of years older than anything else in the Bible? What? Really? Really? True. An Oriental drama thousands of years older than any book that's known to man. The book of Job. Actually. Now look, hold it. Now look at Job chapter 38. Go to verse 31. Can you bind the sweet influence of the Pleiades? The star cluster in Taurus? The influences of the stars of Taurus? Can you loose the bands of Orion? The great constellation Orion? Can you bring forth Mazzaroth, the 12 signs? Can you guide Arcturus, the star Arcturus? Do you know what I just showed you? This is the oldest book known to man, the book of Job, and look what it did. It quoted something that was in existence before it. It quoted the names of the stars and the constellations, which were written in the heavens before the book of Job was written, before the Bible was even a glimmer of an idea in everybody's mind. The entire story. The white horse was written in the stars millions of years before there ever was a Bible. It was all there, the whole story, the virgin, the crucifixion, the resurrection, the serpent, the lamb, all of it is in the stars, thousands of years before there was a Bible. If the Bible came before the stars, it couldn't have quoted them, could it? If the Bible was written before the stars were written, then the Bible couldn't have commented on them, could it? The stars were there first, and the names of the stars and the stories were in the heavens. And that's how this Bible was written. This Bible was written based on the stories of the stars. For God's sakes, it's the Virgin Virgo, and she holds a branch in her right hand. And it says in the Bible that we will be saved by the branch. The Virgo, the virgin consciousness, with the branch in the right hand and the right side. And she holds a shaft of wheat in the left side, and wheat metaphysically means instruction. The branch, that which is the power of the right side, will give instruction to the left side through Virgo. It was written in the stars thousands of years before there ever was a virgin in the Bible. It had to be. Because the oldest book in the Bible is talking about those specific stars and their names. Which means they had to exist before this book was written. Yes?
Who named the stars?
Psalm 147.
Psalm 147.
Psalm 147. That's not good enough. Go to Psalm 147. I don't want them trusting you any more than I want them trusting me. I want them to trust the document. Okay, Psalm 147. What page is it? 539. Psalm 147. Look at verse 4. He tells the number of the stars. He calls them all by their names. The stars seem to be under the influence of one giant central object, and he called them by their names before he ever wrote a Bible. And the people that wrote a Bible wrote it from the stars. And I can document that, and I do document it, and it is all documented in a tape series, and I'm not selling anything, but it's called the Zodiac in the Bible. And every star that figures in the hey, here's the Ursa Major. In the left rear paw is a star that says Daughters of the Assembly. In the right front paw is a star called Talitha. And Jesus is talking to a leader of the synagogue, and he says, my daughter is dying. The leader of the synagogue is the leader of the assembly. The daughter of the assembly is dying, and Jesus goes to the house, and he leans over her bed, and he says, Talitha, rise. It was written in Ursa Major before it was ever even thought of to be put in a Bible. How do I know? The Bible tells me so.
What does that mean?
Okay? Now, let's wrap up, and I'm a little bit late, but let's wrap up the Ten Commandments. Exodus 20, verse 17 on page 64. Exodus 20, verse 17. In Exodus 20, verse 17, it says, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, your neighbor's wife, the man, his manservant, his maidservant, his ox, his ass, or anything that is your neighbor's. You shall not covet means you shall not desire. And that brings you right into play with the Buddhic principle that all of the evil in the world is the product of desire. Desire. And the reason that a lot of people can't make it to meditation or can't take time out to meditation is their desire propels them to try to accomplish and to achieve by themselves. I want you to look at a curious fact there. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. Does that mean if you are a female, you may covet your neighbor's husband?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, there it is. But, I mean, we know what the problem there. The answer is, your neighbor on the right has no wife. Spirit is the bridegroom. You are the bride. You are the wife. Okay? So you may not covet your neighbor's wife. You are the wife. Look at Matthew, page 784. Matthew chapter 9. And look at verse 15. Can the children of the bride chamber mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The Christ is the bridegroom. The Christ is the neighbor. His wife is you. You are the wife. You are the bride. The intercourse is with Christ, with you. The kundalini, the orgasm, is between that which is the lower and you to impact on the pineal, to burrow itself. The seed burrows itself deep into the virgin mind. And there the child is born. And the government shall be upon his shoulders. And his name shall be Wonderful Counselor, the Prince of Peace, the Everlasting Father, the Mighty God. This is all comes from the intercourse between the bridegroom and you. That's why your lamp must have oil in it when the bridegroom comes. And I'll tell you something, the white horse has appeared. The bridegroom is not far behind. And when the white horse has appeared, the bridegroom dismounts his horse, comes down to the stairs and says, the bridegroom is here, the table is ready, let us have the wedding, and have you oil in your lamp. In Isaiah 62:5, go to page 619. I don't know what time goes so fast. Isaiah 62, channel 5, verse 5. Channel 5. For as a young man marries a virgin, so shall your sons marry you. And as the bridegroom rejoices over the bride, so shall your God rejoice over you. Isn't that wonderful? You're the bride, the bridegroom. But it's so exciting because the bridegroom comes on the white horse and Pegasus has now made its move and the stars, the light beings are coming, ushering the bridegroom back to us. And who knows? You know. Revelation 21:2 says the holy city comes down. The holy city, which is the New Jerusalem, is the higher mind. And it says it comes down as a bride adorned for her husband. You don't have to go there. You are the bride to your neighbor on the right, so you cannot covet your neighbor's wife. You cannot covet your neighbor's house. How come you cannot covet your neighbor's house? Look at page 945. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5, for we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were destroyed, we have a building of God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heaven. Your neighbor's house is invisible. Your neighbor's house is nothingness. You can't covet your neighbor's house. The manservant, which is the mind which serves our needs. The maidservant is our emotional nature, which serves our needs. The ox and the ass are the physical power and the emotional power, which all start to come into harmony when the bridegroom and the bride consummate the wedding and through meditation. So if you live in a shack and you see someone in an oceanfront home, you could say, boy, I would love to live. There's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly fine. I do it all the time. Boy, that's a nice house. I'd like to have that. Boy, that's great. If you have a 1972 Volkswagen and they have a 95 Taurus or something, I say, boy, I would like to have a car like that someday. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not what desire is all about. There's nothing wrong with that. See? It is absolutely normal if you have to, and like if you're eating here at what is this, China Dragon restaurant, and you're getting your lo mein, and you know, you hear somebody else is spending the day at the Taj Mahal and champagne. Okay, you say, boy, I'd like to have that. There's nothing wrong with that. But to covet your neighbor's house is to operate your life dwelling in the carnal mind. You can't do that. It's dangerous. It's destructive. You've got to cast yourself into that sea of forgetfulness in meditation and allow that sea to take you to the island where God dwells. To covet your neighbor's wife is to live out of your emotions. To covet your neighbor's house is to live out of your carnal mind. To covet your neighbor's wife is to live out of your emotions. To covet the manservant is to depend on the service of the lower mind. To covet the maidservant is to depend on the service of the lower emotions. The power of the mind is the ox. The ass is the stubborn nature of the mind. You can't have all of that stuff. In spirit, the ox is sacrificed. What happens to the ass? The ass is taken by the Christ who sits upon his stubborn nature and steers him into the holy city of New Jerusalem. We sacrifice the ox, which is our power, and we sacrifice our stubborn emotional nature, and the Christ mounts upon us and takes us into the holy city of New Jerusalem. And as the Apostle Paul said, Jerusalem which is above is free and is the mother of us all. Honor your father and your mother. So, real quick, the Ten Commandments. I am means the single I. Jesus said, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. God is light. Okay? I am is the single I. The word am is not a word. It is present tense singular. It means the single eye. And Jesus told you that if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. If your eye be single, you'll stimulate the pineal gland. Your body will fill with melatonin, which is a skin lightener. The prophecy is fulfilled. There would be no strange gods before me. The strange god you put before God is called religion. Religion. You have dwelled on a god whose idea was to get a little girl pregnant so he could come down here and kill himself. And the reason he had to kill himself was because he was not capable of forgiving you without human blood flowing. That's blasphemy. That's the strange god that you decided to put in front of God. Okay? Take not the way of the Lord in vain. Make not the inner way of no value. And many of us do that. Believe me, we don't have time for it. Everything in this world is too important. If I could come to your house and get on my knees and beg you to wake up to what's going on right now, I would do it. But I can't. And that's not fair anyhow, because I don't interfere in what you do, and I don't single out anybody. When I speak to the ceiling. I just beg of you to please understand. Read the headlines, understand, wake up and understand what's coming. The bridegroom is coming. Don't stay away from this thing. Make the oil flow in your lamp. Please. Remember the Sabbath. The Sabbath is the seventh. It is the point of the seventh chakra. And when you remember the seventh, you'll elevate your energy, and that which is the orgastic fluids will rise through the spine and impact at the pineal gland of the brain. Remember the seventh. The seventh is the Sabbath. Honor your father and your mother. Your father and your mother are your mind and your spirit. You honor your father by lifting your mind. You honor your mother by lifting your spirit. You lift them both in meditation. Do not kill. Do not kill the soul, either yours or anybody else's. And you kill the soul by not feeding it. You kill the soul by not exercising it. You kill the soul by neglecting it. You see those things out there on the thing from the shelter and the animal agency, millions of dogs die. Animals die because they're neglected. They starve to death. You kill the soul by starving it to death. You shall not commit adultery. You do not intercourse in spiritual things with your lower emotions. You do not intercourse with the wicked woman, the strange woman who lives downstairs. You intercourse with the bride, the bridegroom, the Holy One, the Spirit who dwells in the right side. You are married to the bridegroom. Your intercourse must be at the right side. You cannot intercourse here, because when you're intercourse, and I don't mean you don't use your mind. I don't mean you don't use your mind to work or do whatever you want to do or have fun or listen to records and all that. You use your mind. But in things of God, then you are committing adultery. You intercourse here with God and the right side. You shall not steal. You shall not steal, and you shall not steal from yourself or for anybody else, and you steal by taking away the key. You take away the key from yourself when you do not enter within meditation. You're stealing from yourself. You take away the key from somebody else when you don't tell them about meditation or you try to talk them out of it. You are stealing, and thou shalt not steal. Jesus Christ in Luke 11:52 says you take away the key of knowledge because you don't enter within yourself, and those that are trying to enter in, you hinder. You're stealing. Thou shalt not steal. Do not bear false witness against your neighbor. Tell the truth about your neighbor on the right, the divine nirvana. Also tell the truth about your neighbor on the left, emotional religion. And do not desire, do not have a desire for the things which are the left side, which is the carnal side. Desire those things which are the right side of the spiritual side. In these commandments, you will find the movement of the planets. In these commandments, you will find the movement of the cosmic energies that bring creative consciousness into harmony with universal law. Amen. Amen. Thank you very much for spending your time with us and for going through the cosmic 10 commandments with us. And I hope that you enjoyed it, and you can get them all on a series, and Joan will come along. Thank you. Bye-bye.